Okay, it is 6 p.m. and I'm going to call the meeting to order. This is the regular meeting of the Kaneland Board of Education. We would like to inform all board meeting attendees that this meeting is being live streamed and archived for access at any time by our community members on the internet within 24 to 48 hours of the meeting's conclusion. Mr. McCoy, will you please lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And a roll call, please.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Here.
Mr. Mankivsky.
Here.
Mr. Cook.
Here.
Dr. Lawler.
Here.
Mr. McCauley.
Here.
Mrs. Simmons. Here. Mr. Kleiser absent.
Okay, with 6 members present, we do have a quorum. Is there anything that the board would like to move from consent agenda to new business? Once, twice. Okay. If not, then I'll entertain a motion that we approve the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Simmons. Aye. Mr. Cook.
Aye.
Mr. McCauley.
Aye.
Dr. Lawler.
Aye.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Aye.
Mr. Mankivsky.
Aye. 6-0, the agenda is approved. It's now time for board/superintendent salutes. Dr. Layden?
Yes, thank you. We have one, and I'll turn it over to Dr. Bogan, who's joining us at the adult table for Thanksgiving. So welcome to the table, Jackie, and I'll turn it over to you for our salute for tonight.
Thank you, Dr. Layden. As we stand on the threshold of a new school year, I just want to take the time to acknowledge the incredible efforts of our dedicated staff who are working tirelessly behind the scenes to ensure a smooth start to the school year for students and for staff. Their hard work is crucial to our success. Throughout the summer, buildings are just a flurry of activity. You'll see crews have been deep cleaning, waxing, repairing, updating buildings to prepare our facilities. Staff have been busy setting up and troubleshooting technology, diligently handling enrollments, scheduling and organizing essential materials, ordering supplies to ensure meals are ready in our cafeterias, inspecting buses, reviewing the efficiency of routes, as well as completing the many tasks associated with welcoming new staff to our team, new students to our classrooms, and new families to the Kaneland community. Our educators and support staff have been attending professional development sessions, planning lessons, and creating welcoming classroom environments to engage and inspire students from day one. Really, we would just like to say thank you for all of their unwavering commitment and the countless hours that they invest to make our schools a place of learning and growth. Their efforts do not go unnoticed, and we are deeply grateful for all that they do. So, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for our groups.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Bogan. I think it's important because we highlight so many, but it's rare that we highlight the unspoken ones, and you know, they're oftentimes working the hardest at certain times, and so thank you so much. Okay, anything else?
That was all we had. Thank you.
For tonight? Okay. All right, well, tonight's consent agenda contains the following information. Approval of accounts payable and payroll for July 2024. Approval of the treasurer's report, June 2024. Approval of the minutes of the June 24th, 2024 regular meeting and the July 8th, 2024 special meeting. Approval of personnel. Approval of destruction of audio recordings from closed session meetings from January 2023. Approval of post-issuance bond compliance report informational items. Approval of revised building rental fees, the Freedom of Information Act report, and the employee position report. At this time, I will now entertain a motion to approve the consent items listed.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Simmons. Aye. Mr. Gonzalez.
Aye.
Mr. Cook.
Aye.
Mr. McCauley.
Aye.
Dr. Lawler.
Aye.
Mr. Mankivsky.
Aye. All right, the consent agenda is approved, 6-0. I'll give us just a minute for public comment, that way if anyone's walking up to the podium, we
I'm
don't
walking
trip.
up in the dark for sure.
Yeah. Yay, thank you. Okay, Okay, we use the public comment section as an opportunity to listen to our stakeholders. The board does not debate or engage in conversation during this time. I'd like to remind everyone to state your name and village of residence for the record. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes or less. Public comment is a maximum of 30 minutes with a 20-minute total length of time for any one subject. Those who speak are asked to maintain a tone of courtesy and civility. So at this time, I'd like to call Patty Reeder.
All right. Hi, my name's Patty Reeder. I'm a 7th grade math teacher at Harder Middle School. I'm also a community member. We live in Sugar Grove with our 2 kids. One's in 5th grade at John Shields and a freshman at the high school. And I also serve as the KEA Chief Negotiator. Tonight, I'm speaking from my role as Chief Negotiator. I want to begin by expressing my gratitude to our kindergarten teachers at John Stewart, Mrs. Aversa, and Dr. Adkins for monitoring the numbers, recognizing the need for an additional section of extended day kindergarten, and presenting this recommendation to the board tonight. High class sizes make it nearly impossible for teachers to provide the individual attention each student needs to thrive, especially during these formative years. Overcrowded classrooms often lead to increased behavioral issues, disrupting the learning process for all students. When there are too many students, teachers cannot effectively implement differentiated instruction, which is crucial in kindergarten when students have diverse needs and learning paces. Overloaded classes strain classroom resources, including materials, space, and time, further hindering the educational experience. We understand that budget constraints accompany the addition of a new section. However, we believe that investing in our youngest learners will yield significant benefits for the entire school district for years to come. So again, thank you to the kindergarten teachers at Stewart, Mrs. Aversa, and Dr. Adkins for recognizing the need and bringing it to the board this evening. And thank you to the Board of Education for your time and consideration in this important matter. Thanks.
Thank you for your comments. Okay, next up we have Sheila Albano.
My name is Sheila Albano. I am from Elburn, and I am here tonight because I believe this is an excellent forum for when we have complaints and when we have issues and we want you to know about them, but we should also be here then in return when we are really pleased and happy for what actions you have taken. I just want to say how grateful and excited the community is for the what's happening outside on the track and the updates that we are getting from both Mr. Rollman and I'm guessing Mr. Chavez, but wherever the new website is and there's some pictures in a cute little format and everything as updates. If that's Mr. Rollman as well, then double thanks to him. But it is incredibly important that the community knows that when we come to you and we push you hard and you make a decision to go forward with something, that then you follow through on that and you do it properly. And I'm not gonna lie, we've been watching closely, but that is exactly what you've been doing. It is beyond our comprehension. I mean, what we wanted was just to have the track fixed. What is happening out there is more than that. It's a transformation, and it is so exciting. And it is my hope. I know there's going to be another discussion, a report and discussion tonight, but it is my hope that we will ultimately be able to take this track, regardless of anything else that gets done out there, and be able to host the King County meet, which is the oldest meet in the state of Illinois, I believe, or the second oldest. And we haven't been able to host it in decades because of the track. And it's going to be very, very exciting. I just can't say enough. Thank you for that. And it's also going to help us when we get around, whenever we do the referendum, definitely going to use that as something positive to be able to give to the community and say, see, they said that they would do it, and they did, and it's wonderful, and we can do more if you'll help us. So that's the goal. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Okay. So, this time we will proceed to new business. Forgive me. The first item of new business is the approval of the Kaneland High School track surface track project update. Dr. Bogan.
Yeah, Yes, thank you. In your board packet tonight, we are seeking approval of the Kaneland High School track surface portion of the project. When we first got estimates for this project, it was just over $1.2 million. At that time, we realized that we had an expedited timeline with the start of school. We didn't want to have to impact PE classes or our fall sports season. And so one of the things that we did was we split the project up into two parts. So the first part was the actual demolition and paving portion, and then the second part of the project, which we're discussing tonight, is the track resurfacing portion. The first part of the project went out to bid and was awarded, that contract was awarded to Abbey Paving. The second part of this project, we actually did pricing through cooperative pricing, and that really allowed us to maintain the tight timeline. So work could begin on demolition and paving while we had time to get pricing through the cooperative process. We ended up receiving two different proposals through two different cooperatives. Both were competitive, both contained a 5-year warranty on the work that covered defects and materials and workmanship. But after discussing, the engineering firm Gaywalt Hamilton discussed sort of the needs of the district with our athletic director, coaches, and the director of buildings and grounds. They are recommending that the project be awarded to, let me see here, Track Surfaces Company out of Elburn in the amount of $344,494 for installing the polyurethane track system as well as all the striping that goes along with that. So that's the first part that will need approval. The second part is regarding an update just about sort of where the project is today. So the track project actually started, work began outside on July 1st. They began with demolition. That project is being handled by Abbey Paving, which has done work for the district prior. As part of this track project, they are going to be installing 2 additional lanes on a lengthened straightaway. There's also concrete curbing on the inside of the track for drainage, and they have also updated the look of the track as well as where the triple jump runways are within the track, and then they relocated the pole vault and long jump to outside of the track. So there's definitely been a lot of activity. If you've had the opportunity to see it, there's pretty much been work every day, with the exception of when we had some severe weather. On July 15th and 16th, we did have some slowed work because of those storms that came through with all of the water. They did have to halt some work for a few days as that water cleared. In addition, this past week, while they were excavating on the stadium's northwest side, there's a fiber for some of our Wi-Fi internet cabling that runs between Meredith and the high school, and that was damaged in the process. And so we did have to do some additional work. Some repairs were done to the actual infrastructure this past Saturday, and then the tech team, our IT team, will go in and they're working on getting that backfilled and setting up some ports, so they'll be able to monitor that to ensure that that's restored. The good news in all of that is that we did not lose Wi-Fi access at either of our buildings. The IT team here does a fantastic job with ensuring backups and redundancy is in place, so there was nothing interrupted there. But they are working to restore that more permanently. This past week also, the contractor did complete proof rolls. At that time, we didn't get the best news or results from that. It was essentially found that 50% of the track, the substrate base, was in worse condition than they had hoped for, but we knew that that was a possibility. And so Mr. Payton has worked with the engineer and also with the contractor, and they've come up with a plan to address that. And so essentially what they're going to be doing is they're going to be laying about 8 inches of additional substrate material to make sure that that east side of the track is on par with our west side. As of right now, it has not impacted the timeline of the project. They've been able to move forward with it. They've also been able to move forward with the project because that work falls within the 5% contingency that we've laid out for that project. I do anticipate that there may be some work or some cost outside of the contingency due to additional drainage work that we are required to do as part of this project, that the county is essentially asking and requiring us to do. So as we get numbers back on that, I will be bringing that back to the board, for updates and consideration. But the biggest thing tonight is really just moving forward with the track surfacing portion so we can keep this project on time. Set out. Are there any questions that I can answer?
Yeah, I just want to clarify.
Sure.
Is the 344, is that over and above the 1.2, or that's
No,
fixed
part
into?
That's part
that's
of
what our
that
estimate
initial cost
was.
that
Okay.
we thought, so.
Okay.
That dollar amount is aligned with what we thought it would be.
Okay.
Can you refresh us briefly on where we're at in the budget, assuming we have a budget of 1.2 million?
Yeah, so we're right there. We are right, this essentially puts us right at the top of the budget. So any additional work will be over and above this that we do.
Okay.
And that includes the 2 extra lanes that they're
Yep.
adding? Okay. And then as far as there's a 5-year warranty, what do they recommend as far as maintaining the track? How often, and are we going to be going through them? Obviously, because
Anything under warranty for those first 5 years, whether it's materials or workmanship, would fall under that. But Mr. Payton is here and can answer more in-depth questions on that.
Yeah, yeah, so anything as far as workmanship and materials that fails would be covered in those 5 years. Anything damaged, say we drag a mower across it and rip it up, that would be on us. But one of the advantages of going with this company is they're right there in Elburn. They have a history with the district. They've done a lot of repairs for us over the years. They did the last track the last time it was done. So they're a good partner for the district, and they're close by. And I'm sorry, you had another
just,
question?
yeah, so what is their timeline? If they got a 5-year warranty, what do they recommend is going to be the first, okay, hey, we have to do something to the track to maintain it? What did they?
So we would be looking at the 7-8 year time frame, resurface, not like to the,
Yeah,
not what we're doing now.
Yeah, yeah.
We would recoat the track
And
surface.
did they give you a price tag? What?
No, they did not. I mean, it's a little far out as far as
Just,
projecting, but
Okay.
no. And this surface that we landed on is a little more expensive than like your bottom rung, just so you have kind of an idea. This isn't an Olympic level track. It's not bargain basement track. It's a typical high school level track. Mr. Rollman and myself and the coaches all talked about this and felt this was the best place for Kaneland to be. It's a good, solid track that'll be in good shape for those 7 to 8 years until we need to recoat again.
And they're doing 8 lanes on the straightaway, and it's going to be on an inner lane they're going to add?
They're adding, on the straightaway, they're adding 2 inner lanes, so it'll actually be 9. There's currently 7, it'll be 9.
And it just pushes into the football field a little more?
It actually doesn't, because we took out those jump,
Oh, okay.
so it's actually on this side of that, so.
Okay.
In terms of timeline, you're confident that we'll, I guess my primary concern is impacting the football season. You're confident that we'll be able to, if, at the very least, accommodate, if it's still under construction, we'll be able to hold our football games at home, our home games?
Yeah, the contractor has not given any indication that any of the little hiccups we've had are gonna cause any problems. It's of course weather pending.
Sure.
This looks like a really bad week, so, but it was all supposed to be, everything within the fence of the stadium was supposed to be done end of next week. That was the timeline that we set forth for them. So even if it goes another week, we have a little bit of a buffer there to have it ready to go for nights under the lights.
And what is the estimated date
like, the paving portion inside the stadium should be done, I think it's like the 8th or 9th of August. So it's coming up quick, but, I mean, I met with the contractor again today, and, I mean, that's still his plan, at this point. He didn't hedge on that at all, so.
Any other questions? All good? Thank you. Dr. Bogan, Mr. Bean. Appreciate it. Yeah, we got it. Yeah. So at this time, I'll entertain a motion that the Board of Education approves the contract for the track resurfacing from Track Surfaces Company in the amount of $344,494 for installing the Banon BSS 100 polyurethane track system and striping.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. McCauley.
Aye.
Dr. Lawler.
Aye.
Mr. Mankowski.
Aye.
Mrs. Simmons. Aye. Mr. Gonzalez.
Aye.
Mr. Coe.
Aye.
All right, motion carries 6-0. The Kaneland High School track surface contract has been approved. Second item of new business is a presentation of the Kaneland Ignite Personalized Learning Academy, 9th and 10th grade expansion plan. And this one goes to Dr. Layton.
Yep, thank you. If you recall back on April 8th, at the April 8th board meeting, there was a motion that the board made and seconded to delay the opening of 9th and/or 10th grade for KIPLA for the 24-25 school year. But at the same time, the board did ask the administration to bring back 3 primary topics that you were looking for information. Number 1, what's the timeline for families for consideration for 25-26? Number 2, what would be a student enrollment number that would be recommended or that we'd want to utilize to potentially consider it for 25-26? And then also the last piece was the budgetary piece. So we have those 3 topics tonight, and the group that's about ready to present has some additional information. But again, tonight is an informational session and not action. So they will walk us through a series of slides and then see if the board has any questions for consideration.
All right. Good evening. So just as a reminder, we had presented some information about what a KIPLA experience would look like pushing into 9th, 10th, and potentially 11th and 12th. We are identifying 4 core classes, and what we mean by that are math, social studies, science, and English language arts as being classes that are housed at KIPLA or at the KMAC facility. Students would then be transported back and forth to the high school to obtain elective classes. And I'm sorry, actually, I missed one. Physical education would also be housed over at KIPLA. So in looking to expand into 9th and 10th grade, when we put it on pause, we were asked for a hard number. We identified 25 as the target students in order to justify the expansion. So what we want to do is just be upfront and clear and transparent with the board, as well as clear with our community about what the enrollment will look like when we go to registration. As the board knows, that every March, Dr. Atkins comes forward with a recommended staffing plan. The work for the staffing plan is based from the high school experience on enrollment that begins in December. So in December and in January, that's when 9th, 10th, and rising 9th, which would be 8th graders, rising 10th, which would be 9th graders, so on and so forth, are making their course requests. Those course requests are then given to the high school administration. Sections are developed. We work things out within the district to see what is necessary in order to staff the high school as we go forward. So in order to do that, we need to understand what the enrollment's going to look like at KIPLA. So we're going to start, excuse me, we're starting early. We're starting in September to open up our enrollment. We have some plans for how to get information out about requests for enrollment at KIPLA. We are closing the registration on November 29th. We are doing that so that we have hard numbers to come back and present to the board that we have the numbers necessary in order to move forward, or if we don't, what the next steps would be. So that's the plan for that. So it's the 29th, which is earlier than you're going to see at any attendance center, and that's just because of the uniqueness of KIPLA moving forward into the expansion in the 9th and 10th grade level. We do have some plans for how we're going to be working with that for next steps in order to do the recruitment. So I'm going to hand it over to our new KIPLA principal.
Good evening. The next steps in terms of meeting that timeline that we set to determine if registration is a possibility by November is to offer a variety of informational nights and a variety of sessions. So some of them will take place virtually to allow lots of people to attend. About every other week you can come and take a tour of the school. We have family information sessions happening almost monthly throughout the fall, starting in September and then culminating in November to finish up with our timeline. Let's see. Then there's additional information times for parents and community members and interested people to learn about KIPLA, and that includes informational guides, watching videos that are posted online, listening to our podcast session that's coming up. We just had our first one that launched in July. And then having dedicated times for 8th and 9th graders to learn about KIPLA and options for them as potential high schoolers. Let's see, the next thing is to talk about, share kind of an overview of a sample high school schedule.
Okay, so I had mentioned at the beginning of this that we were going to be sharing the elective offerings with the high school. So the way we're going to be transporting, keep in mind that at KMAC, that's also where we house some of our Fox Valley Career Centers. So we already have embedded within our practice transportation shuttles going from the high school to the KMAC facility. That's happening 3 times throughout the day, 3 different sessions. So we have up there is a sample, and I just want to put out there that this is a sample. It's not etched in stone on the plan for how we're going to be working it so that students from the 9th and 10th grade attending KIPLA could be accessing elective classes at the high school. And it's just the first session or the first couple periods of the day, second sessions, the middle periods of the day, third sessions at the end of the day. So they're able to get back and forth, and there's some flexibility built into that so they can get to the high school when an elective class is offered, and then back to KIPLA. We heard from the community members that were here supporting the KIPLA this past spring that they understand that there's going to be some choices that they're going to have to make once we have the numbers and have a better idea of where we are. Of course, we're going to be working with our counselors, working with our teachers, and working with our master scheduler to get the most bang for our buck in terms of transportation, in terms of costs, and in terms of offerings. But that is just a sample schedule, sharing with you all, with the public, and with our parents as we're providing information during the enrollment time this fall.
Dr. Horn, is that longer than a normal KHS student's day?
It is based, so the periods that you see to the left are based on the current high school schedule. So it's that same 7:35 to 2:50. It's that same time frame.
Okay, thank you.
So the elective periods, those are aligned with the current schedules for Fox Valley Career Center?
With the Fox Valley Career Center, correct.
Yeah, okay, so
Yes.
it's essentially just filling up the buses more and nothing more
Correct.
than that in terms of costs?
Correct.
Or just, okay.
Correct. Okay. So for costs, we'll turn over to Jackie.
Excuse me. So this first slide here that we have on program costs, this is related to expansion only. One of the things that I want to point out here is that in the far right column, you're going to see a range for each of these. And that is really based on the need for staffing and also for the number of students available. And so we're going to go through each of these categories in more detail. But essentially the range that we have right now for total estimated expenses is $326,000 to $592,500. Same thing for a per pupil program startup expense. It ranges between $13,000 and $23,700. I do want to just mention to everyone that all of these ranges at the bottom, the total estimated cost and the per pupil, was built using 25 students enrolled in those ranges, and it looked at essentially the low end of cost to the high end of cost. So those two numbers in terms of cost could fluctuate. It could either go up or it could go down based on the number of students enrolled and what their needs are.
Dr. Bogan, can I ask a question? So I understand these are new costs. There is already a cost for these students, though, because they are part of our district, right? So that cost also, I don't know how you capture it, because I know it's not directly, but there's certainly some cost that would be kind of offsetting some of this cost, right?
Not really, because we're opening up a new site, and so these are really built on, and I'm gonna move forward to this next slide.
Okay.
When we talk about program costs for this, like when we talk about certified staff, one of the estimates is that we could open this program with 25 students and 3 certified teachers. That is under the idea that we would find a teacher who is both ELA and also certified in social studies. So if for some reason we can't find that person with that dual certification, automatically right there, we would need an additional FTE. So 3 goes to 4. We put the range at 6 for FTE because depending on those students' needs, do we need to add a social worker? Do we potentially need to add a psychologist, or what other certified staff member would need to be supported? Right now, yes, those students are in our high school. But those numbers essentially can be absorbed by the current staff. So this is new staffing. These are new costs just for expansion. There are some other costs, like the cost of that elective teacher that's teaching over at the high school that will have KIPLA students. That's already in the budget, but it's not necessarily offsetting.
Okay.
I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So sort of as I listed here, you'll see that range is really because we're not quite sure what that student pool will look like, what their needs will look like, and then also, that 3 potentially going to a 4 because of that ELA and social studies. We did have those additional staff, could we need a social worker? Could we need perhaps a counselor or a special education teacher based on need? That is possible, so that's why you see, okay, 3 we know is like the least amount of staff we could possibly need if we can find those right people, and then it could be 6 or potentially more.
Would these 3 also, when we expand to 11 and 12, or are we gonna need another 3, or these 3 are would technically be for 9 through 12 at some point?
Yeah, it would depend on those numbers, right? Okay. So like if you go from 25 to 50 is way different than if you go from 25 to 100, but that 3 was like the minimum that we would need to expand for 9th and 10th. Same thing for that support staff. There's a little bit of a range there because that's really based again on student needs. We know we need a minimum of 1 support staff member, whether that's for monitoring, lunch duty, those types of things, but depending on enrollment, do you need additional staff for that?
Dr. Bogan, could you go back 2 slides very quickly? Sorry. The bottom figure, the 13,000 to 23,000, how does that play in with the average $17,500 per student? Is that in addition to the 17,500, or is that replacing it?
So this range here, that's a really great question. This is just based on those expansion costs. That doesn't figure in any of the shared district costs that all of our buildings have. So the actual per pupil expense for cost of the program would be higher than this. But the minimum it would be is that 13,000.
Okay, I see. Thank you.
So as I understand, just to clarify, because you touched on it, it's not going to, it's going to change the overall cost per pupil when we move them in. It's not necessarily going to reduce from the high school
Correct.
over. It's just going to change the figure when we look at it as an average across the board, because we still have to employ those teachers at the high school.
Correct.
It's the opposite.
So it's not like it's offsetting that.
It's the opposite. Yeah.
Supplies and materials, again, here you'll see a range, and this is really based on how many students are over there. Some of the licensing for different apps and things are site-based, so adding a new high school site, like that's just an additional cost for that site. The other part of it is, shifting those licenses. That may be essentially cost neutral, right? Because those licenses would move from the high school over to the KIPLA up there per student. The other thing that you'll see a range on and pretty significant is really in that furniture and equipment, and that's for those personalized learning spaces for the program. So it really, again, is dependent on how the program is able to be set up. Is there one shared classroom for that ELA social studies? Does there need to be 2 spaces for that? So some of those considerations we tried to build in here and say, okay, this is the least possible based on this enrollment, based on the number of staff members we're able to have, and this is potentially the highest figure that we could see in that area.
But that would be a
With of our
one-time.
knowns.
That's a one-time cost.
That
right?
would be a one-time cost.
Which
Yep.
is significant, right? Because, I mean, $100,000 out of a low end of $300,000, right? Like,
Right, I
yeah.
mean, it is a big number. I think where there's really not a lot of additional costs is really in transportation. I know that has been an area where we've questioned and we've really looked at, but that is an area where we are already transporting those students that are taking the bus, they're riding from their homes, and they're either riding to the high school or they're riding to KMAC. So that's really not an additional expense. Where there is just a little bit of expense, and we're really trying to work with the current Fox Valley schedule to minimize that impact, is just the additional transportation and shuttles to and from. And so there is some cost in there, but it's very minimal. The other area where it's listed as to be determined, but we also believe is very, very minimal, is in that, field trip costs coming from KMAC, after school activities, those types of things. That's not gonna be a large additional expense, so that is also pretty flat. Are there any questions on those costs? I know it's difficult when it's a range and it's a big number, so. All right, I will turn it over.
Okay, so the next couple slides just address some future structure planning. So we just wanted to make sure that we communicated that while we're looking at the expansion to 9th to 10th grade, we're also trying to think more long-term, and should that move forward, what would 11th and 12th grade look like? And so we're really thinking about ways in which we can expand opportunities for students at the high school, starting to look into some virtual platforms that could support different types of personalized learning opportunities, internship opportunities, potential partnerships with Fox Valley. Those are things that are currently being investigated and researched while this 9th through 10th grade process is going on. The other thing we're really starting to dig into and consider is a capstone seminar for 12th graders should we expand to the high school. So a capstone seminar would be ultimately the culmination of a student's learning experience across all of their years at Ignite Academy. It would be an interdisciplinary way for students to demonstrate all that they have learned, sort of their combined learning through a project, through a topic of choice. It would ultimately be a way that they would be able to demonstrate proficiency across multiple standards. This would be a course that we would develop and make sure is added to the course booklet, and just wanted to make sure we communicated that that is a process we're starting to dig into, consider, and see how other districts are working towards that while we continue to think about 9th and 10th grade.
Oh, this is good. If the capstone seminar, is that for every high school student, not just for Ignite?
Right now, we were looking at just the Ignite experience, since they'll be working on customized pathways in a different way that other students would be looking, but the concept of some type of culminating activity at the 12th grade level certainly could be considered district-wide.
Sounds good, thank you.
Okay, so in that vein of future planning, one of the things that probably people are pretty interested in is like, what do the details look like for potential high school students in terms of grading and transcripts and graduation? So there are some things that are already in place that we do for our students that are there now, in terms of they get a transcript if they move to another school. There's a record that follows them, and we would anticipate that would happen for them in high school. Students that are potentially in the Kipla High School would receive a graduation diploma, would be celebrated just like all of our other graduating seniors. They would have the same requirements for graduation that our high school seniors would, and that kind of thing. Currently, our students that are enrolled in the Empower section for middle school, they have the option to participate in extracurricular activities at Harder Middle School, and we would anticipate that they would be able to do the same thing at Kaneland High School, so that they could have that full experience should they want to take part of that. Okay. Any questions?
I have a question. I sure I've mentioned it in this arena, but I've mentioned it elsewhere. So I've learned, I've been in there, and I've done, I feel like I've invested a lot of time and energy into understanding personalized learning and KIPLA, especially not being from education, and I feel like I have a good grasp. But one of the things I understand about it is that it's not going to be for everybody, right? It's for a certain style of learning, and I think giving our students the opportunity to engage in this is amazing. It's a great opportunity. But one of the obstacles I've heard from parents and myself is that when these kids are in the classroom, there's no effort to identify the optimal student to go in there. Whether it's having the PD with the teachers, or bringing a team to go in there and say, Jalen Gonzalez, you would be ideal for personalized learning, or Jalen, you probably should stay in a standard environment, or a traditional environment. So I guess I'm wondering what can be done, because I feel like if we talk about cost per pupil, KMAC or KIPLA's, expensive for these kids. Well, the more we bring up that enrollment in KIPLA, the more that cost per student will go down. And on the other side, we also don't want students in there that aren't, it's not ideal for them, because you're not going to thrive if you're in the wrong environment as well.
Matching the suitability.
Correct.
Suitability for the student, yeah.
And I recognize the fact that it's public school, and we don't want to, but I think we could help the ideal candidates, and that would in turn grow the program organically. Even from, I'm looking from an elementary school perspective, that's where my parent head lies, but that would grow it to expand to this point.
Yeah, do you mind if?
Yeah, I have some thoughts, but you go ahead.
We've
I
been
can
working
jump into
together on this too, so either one of us truly could answer that question. I think those are all absolutely valid points that we've recognized along the way, as well as how to make sure that everybody is knowledgeable about not only what is happening at Ignite, but the type of student who would most likely thrive in that environment. So we've developed a PR plan for internal uses, for teachers, for family, community, those types of things. So some of the things we plan to do in the upcoming year are to increase visits. We have each of the principals sending us potential dates for teams of teachers to come out and tour Ignite. We're going to make that a facilitated experience so that we have a pre-brief with the teams that come over to observe, take them on the tour, have an opportunity to debrief after, talk about what they've seen, answer any of the questions that they have, and really talk on even an individual student basis where they can share with our staff, here are some students that I'm thinking might benefit, and have some of those conversations. We're also scheduling with each of the building principals, kind of going back to a parent coffee concept that we've used in the past, where Ignite staff will come out to the buildings, thinking that most likely it would be right at a drop-off time, so that anybody interested in talking about their student specifically, or even just asking more questions, could come in and meet with us, and we can provide some information. We did increase the number of family informational nights, made one of them virtual for families that might have difficulty coming out due to other events. We did just record our first podcast about Ignite Academy, so we're hoping that that helps. But really our focus is going to be on making sure that our classroom teachers across the district have a deep understanding of what the structures are, what types of students have been most successful, to really help them be more knowledgeable about not only identifying, but then opening up those conversations with families that they think that might benefit from that structure. So that's a large push for this coming year.
I think those are really great strategies, and I commend you for them. I think they're great. As you were talking, though, I was still thinking they seem a little passive to me. And so, I don't know, President Gonzalez, is this what you meant? So if it's not, I don't put words in your mouth. But talk me through why we shouldn't be more pushy. I don't know, right? Like, why we shouldn't just, like, give a parent an invitation to, like, look, we think your kid should come here, right? Like, and here's a direct invite to enroll. Because I think if parents don't know what this really is, and I think you can engage it, but I still think at the end of the day, I think some of them might need a nudge that, for good reasons though, not nudge the wrong ones, but nudge the ones that maybe like, just need that little bit of a oomph to get going.
Yeah, I think what our conversations and the feedback we've gotten from teachers is that the first step to that is making sure that the staff that would be giving that nudge has a deep understanding of what they're nudging that family towards.
Yeah,
And
that's a good point.
that
That's a good point.
All of our staff are aware, I mean, everybody has had training in personalized learning, everybody is exposed to the 10 tenets of personalized learning. The exact structures of what that looks like in action at Ignite, it being our first year, we made lots of changes along the way that first year as well. So we're really at a point that we want to make sure they fully understand what would this student's experience be, so that they could feel more confident in opening up that conversation with parents. The feedback we've had from staff is, I'm comfortable sharing your name or sharing a date of a family visit, but I'm not sure I know enough about Ignite to individually encourage a family to go and check it out quite yet. So we're hoping that by increasing the knowledge of classroom teachers across the district, they would feel more confident and comfortable and knowledgeable to be having deeper conversations and recommendations.
So the only thing is, there's that, what is our process, go back just to kids in elementary that are excelling, when they go to middle school, who is telling who that this child needs to be in an accelerated class? Who's telling who that this child needs to be in AP classes? What is that process for just a normal Kaneland student? I feel that's what we're missing here for Ignite is telling a parent, like, yes, here's the information and stuff like that, but like saying, hey, your student really fits our model, we really fit. So it's you encouraging them. Plus, then they have the right, like we all have the right of, like, yeah, our kid was an honors student. If we want to put him in honors or we want to put him in AP, we can. We had that conversation with our kid. It still falls on us, but it's you guys are the experts that need to tell a parent, hey, if you don't know about us, this is what we are, but we are really recommending this for your child.
Yeah.
And I think that's the part that is missing. Love that the teachers, like you said, definitely, teachers need to have a little bit more, be stronger in that. Like they said, they know enough, but not enough to, like they know enough to give your name. But if a parent talks to a teacher because that parent already trusts that teacher, because they've known them for a while, that's huge. But that next step, what do we do in that process in a regular student?
Yeah, typically, like you said, that's a lot of staff-to-staff conversation. So fifth grade teachers share information about their current fifth grade students with the middle school. Those recommendations are typically made from teacher to teacher. There's parent input component to that as well. But it really does rely on the staff knowing the students deeply, which is a foundation of what we do in Kaneland. So that part, I feel like it's not a barrier. Do our teachers know their students well enough? The barrier is, do they know enough about this new program? Even some of those more traditional structures that have been in place for years, that took time to evolve and develop for teachers to really feel confident and to see historically which of my recommendations really was a great match and maybe which didn't turn out to be a great match. So some of those things are going to take time, but I feel like the foundation of that certainly is teachers absolutely knowing their students to a very deep level, and then also knowing the programming well enough to know if it's going to be a match.
Yeah, to your point, and to both your points, that's been my experience. Is I agree 100% that it should be a more, for lack of a better term, aggressive approach. But at the end of the day, I think the teachers aren't fully, they don't have the full knowledge or the full confidence. And at the end of the day, who knows your student better than their teacher, And so they're the ones who should probably make that assessment, because especially at the lower level, because they know how your child learns. And so I think that that's a great approach, but I back to Mrs. Garland's note, Dr. Garland's note, it should start with the PD or however you guys want to handle that,
Yeah, our plan is to really bring our staff out to the setting, let them immerse in it, let them experience. We didn't have a lot of opportunities to do that last year as we were getting our legs under us, but that's definitely, every month we have visits set up for staff to come out and come over. And it can be voluntary, it can also be recommended by an administrator or just anybody could recommend that somebody come out and observe if they have questions. But really getting them out to see it. I think we've done a lot of providing narrative information in the form of here's some talking points, or here's a video of but actually being there, talking to students, talking to staff, immersing in the day, I think that's really going to give them the biggest understanding of what it is, and continuing to communicate that balance of a Kaneland education, regardless of what building you're in, is an excellent education. And so there's always that fine line you need to walk of any student would be incredibly successful in any of our schools. We have incredible staff across the district. it's identifying the best matches for those students, and so that becomes a real individualized conversation. So we do want to tread very carefully on never implying that one school is going to be able to outperform or anything like that, but really talking about what does each setting offer, similar to how we talk about special education continuums of service. What are the needs of the students and which environment might best support those needs? That's the conversation we want to make sure we keep having, not this is better in this way or this is better in this way, but what does that student individually specifically need? And of all of these opportunities that Kaneland offers, which would be the best match?
I think you bring up very good points, and I agree with what you had said as well. I just think it's this like hidden gem, and I just want everybody to come see it, right? It's like, you know, I'm a proponent of it. I've been on a board for years talking about it, but until I went to it, like, I didn't really understand what it was. And then when I got there, I was like, this is like magic, like what's happening in these places, and everybody should see how this is working, right? So I
agree.
But I don't know, maybe I'm just too impatient.
I think it's a huge part of that culture of excellence we're trying to build.
Yeah.
The difficult part for us as a board is we also have to consider the financial aspect, and and through that, we have to consider, you know, it shows up through enrollment, and, you know, at some point, we have to make those hard decisions, and so we want, or at least I feel like most of us want this thing to thrive, but if at the end of the day it doesn't, then it comes back on us because, you know, the community has spoken through enrollment that they don't want it, and we're responsible for being the voice of the community in our role. So I think that's I mean, that's how I see it. Yeah,
I think you articulated it perfectly. Yeah, that's our biggest challenge.
So my question for you is timeline. Obviously, we want all students to come to, you know, we're not just focused on 9 and 12, I mean 9 and 10, but we are. We want this to open in the next, you know, next school year. The PD is great for, you know, personal development for these teachers and stuff like that, but we need to get, what, our 8th grade teachers and our 9th grade first, and because we need those numbers. And so how do we expedite even that this year to make sure your timeline is short here? We're looking starting September, you know, we're ending November. That doesn't give a lot of time for teachers to start their new school year, get to know their students, get rolling and stuff. I know it takes months, you know, and then we're saying, hey, by the way, come over here and check it out and learn more about it. So how can we even just this year kind of like expedite that part to really encourage them? Or is there a way that you guys, these are 8th and 9th graders, that you can audit maybe some of these students and hear from the counselors and stuff. Maybe counselors can actually say, hey, I don't know about this, and then maybe you guys are having those personal, it's a lot of extra work for you this year, but like you said, we're trying to get it open, and the personal development, you know, that you know, the teachers all year long, because we want it for all the grades, but right now we're so focused on this part of it. So how do we expedite that to make sure we can get this open next year?
Yeah, September 3rd, we're opening registration, so we will be promoting that through all of our communication formats. We're even looking at building some yard signs and having those made and getting the word out in that way. We will be going into 8th grade homerooms and making sure that they're aware of this opportunity, direct emailing some of those 8th grade families, information through the KCN, through the podcast that we just recorded, all of our communication methods, trying to get that out. I think our concern is the registration timeline's incredibly early, and that's asking parents to make a decision a full year in advance. And so that's a barrier that we can't do a whole lot about because of the time we would need in terms of the hiring process. So hitting all of those, heading out to schools, hosting visits. We have brainstormed every possible communication. We have a month-by-month PR plan that we've gone through and have implemented, starting actually this month. So I feel like we have a comprehensive PR plan, but time will tell if that works. So certainly there's my email address, so any other suggestions on how to get the word out, I think, you know, that's always the conundrum, right? You feel like you're communicating in as many ways as you can, and ultimately you don't reach them. So we are willing to go anywhere, talk to anyone, host any other ideas, but we agree with you. We believe it's a gem, like you said. I like that word. I'll be using that. And are very hopeful that we can get the enrollment necessary to justify the cost.
And I'd just like to add, I think, Dr. Lawler, one of the points that you made is, I've been listening and hearing about this. I think when I looked, you know, we've been discussing this concept since about 2014, we're at 10 years now. And so there is a difference to see it in action. And so I think that is one of the reasons why the school's open. We are inviting you to come in a variety of different ways. We want to be transparent and open, and you know how sometimes you can hear about something, but then you just need like 5 minutes to see it, and it makes complete sense, or it gives you a little bit more structure to think about and ask questions about. And so that's also part of the reason for that plan. So I'm thankful that you said that, because it kind of sparked part of the method for our madness.
Just briefly, on the capstone seminar, any thought to looking to see what other schools elsewhere are doing? I know of a couple of schools in Wisconsin. There were a couple in Albuquerque who had this Cueva and Sandia Prep. And Sandia both had it.
Yeah, that's correct. There's
It's already been
several,
done.
there's schools that are out there, and the inspiration for it does come from the College Board. So College Board does, through AP, offer a similar class to this, and it's a way for students in an interdisciplinary and personalized manner take everything they've been working on over the course of 4 years and pull them together. And to feed into what the board's been talking about, the culture of excellence, looking at college readiness, very similar to what's happening with the master's thesis, depending on what pathway a student takes towards university.
At some universities, your senior thesis.
Correct.
Yes.
Correct. Yep.
Any further questions, discussion? Thank you all for.
Yeah, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
There's no action needed on this item, is purely informational, so definitely appreciate the discussion, and I appreciate you getting ahead of it, so, we can have these discussions early, so thank you.
You're welcome. That's the timeline that we have laid out. If there's other updates or other questions or anything else that you require into the fall before November, please let us know, and we can bring the appropriate information to the board.
Okay, well then, we'll move on to the third item of new business, which is the approval of one full FTE for the school psychologist at Harder Middle School and Kaneland High School. Dr. Layden.
Yes, thank you for that, and I'll turn it over here in a second to Dr. Atkins. As you know, we have a staffing plan in March that Dr. Horn also alluded to, but we monitor throughout the summer other needs that may take place throughout staffing, throughout class sizes, and we are at a point where there are 2 needs for tonight. So with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Atkins, and you can provide a little more update.
Thank you, and again, to reiterate, that March minimum staffing plan is just that, it's the minimum because it is March. And here we are in August. As board members who have been on the board for a while know, we very often come back at this point in the year with an increase here or there, and we have 2 of those requests for you tonight. The other thing I'd like to mention before I get into it is a thank you to Mrs. Eggleston and her department for the monitoring that goes on with the special education caseloads and needs. And that's what brings us here tonight, is that work resulted in us identifying a need for additional psychology support at our middle school and our high school. We've had conversations with the board in the past where there have been that question of, is this a want to do, prefer to do, or a need to do? This is a need to do. There are requirements that we need to meet for IEPs, 504s, case studies, and we needed a psychologist support to do that. It'd be a full-time position, so a 1 FTE, and it would be split between the middle school and the high school. So we're here tonight to ask for that FTE allotment to be provided to those 2 sites, and that would allow us to then begin searching for a psychologist to fill that need, and then work with the 2 existing psychologists. We have 1 currently at each site, and this would give us essentially 1.5 at the middle school, 1.5 at the high school. So, questions from the board?
Is this being special ed driven?
Yes.
Based on their special ed numbers?
Correct. Case study evaluation specifically.
So we should say yes.
You had me to need compliance.
Yep.
Any other questions or discussion? No? Okay, well, then I will entertain a motion that the Board of Education approve 1 additional FTE for a school psychologist assigned to the Kaneland High School and Kaneland Harder Middle School.
Second.
So moved.
So moved and second. You can pick which one.
And a roll call.
Dr. Lawler,
Aye.
Mr. Minkowski,
Aye.
Mrs. Simmons.
Aye.
Mr. Gonzalez,
Aye.
Mr. Cook,
Aye.
Mr. McCauley.
Motion carries 6-0. The additional school psychologist for KHS and HMS is approved. Staying on track with the same theme, the fourth item of new business is the approval of one FTE for extended day kindergarten teacher at John Stewart Elementary. Can I just turn it over to
Right
Dr.
to him.
Atkins?
Yeah,
All right.
sure can.
Dr. Atkins.
So we were looking at 66 students in kindergarten at Stewart at the start of March. We talked at that time at the minimum staffing plan about how we don't always get enrollments in pockets, but we did. We got 8 more students in kindergarten at Stewart. Always love when we get more kindergartners because that's always a good thing. And I love getting them early because then they have the Kaneland experience their entire time. So with those 8 additional students, we're now up to 74. Dividing that into the sections that we had goes well beyond the 22-to-1 ratio that we target. I do want to take a minute to remind the board that the 22-to-1 is a target, not a cap. And so it's important for us to all understand that we get that next student and we're at 22.3, we don't automatically add. So there is some room there. But at the same time, 24.6, that means a class of 24 and some of 25, that's not okay for us for kindergarten. So we're asking for that additional FTE. That will bring us down to 18.5 to 1, which still allows us room to have more students enroll at Stewart should they enroll, and give us that preferred section. I gave you the section numbers at our other 3 sites, which are 18 and 20 to 1. So that would bring us back in alignment with the other 3 buildings. As we have talked about in the past too, if we have a preference, and I say this as a 10-year veteran of being an elementary principal, if I had a place to put an FTE, it would be at the primary grades, K1, 2. That's where we need that early literacy and support for those students for their early literacy. So we're here to ask Iowa to also point out, different from the psychologist, there is choice here. This isn't a requirement from the state, but this is the best practice and the recommendation from your administration. So we're asking for that additional FTE for kindergarten at Stewart, and if the board has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Is the 8 student jump just people moving in?
Correct.
To the district? Oh, that's good.
Correct.
That's good. Yeah.
Contractually with KEA, what are we, because I heard you say it probably leans towards a need, but it sounds like it's like edging.
Yeah, well, that's what I meant about it not being a cap. So in our contract with the association, we have recommended class sizes. So K1, 2, the recommended class size is 22 to 1. K3, 4, 5, it's 24 to 1. So those are the targets that we shoot for. But of course, there's variance in that. If you looked at our specific class size ratios across all the buildings and all the grades, you'll see them fluctuate from 20 to 23, 24. But for our littles, for our K1, 2 kids, once we get to that 24, 25, we need to start looking at bringing in another section. So it's not a contractual component that we must add another teacher, but there are contractual components for the association to advocate for additional staff. We did add language this year. In the past, it was driven pretty much by the numbers, but we've added in language that we also want to make sure we look at the class composition too. It's not always just the straight divisor. Sometimes there's more needs with a certain cohort than another, and so we do have those conversations. It's important to know that the principals will have conversations with the prior year's teachers, the current year's teachers, anytime we have a hot spot or anytime we're getting close to meeting those thresholds, to talk with the staff about what do we do, who are the kids that are coming in, what have we learned about them when they've been here before, what might we want to put in place from the get-go for them. So it's a complicated conversation. It's an involved conversation. It definitely combines the science of the numbers and the pedagogy with the art of what we know about kids and who they are and what they're about. But in this particular instance, being kindergarten, being at that 24, 25 level, we do need to add. My recommendation is that we add that section. There's not a compulsion contractually through the association or a compulsion legally through the state, but it is a best practice for us. And as we build that culture of excellence, we want to make sure that we're power loading our primary grades.
Can I ask you one more question?
Yeah.
And I know I'll never hold you to anything given the future, because we don't know what the future holds, but based on your past experience at this point in time, do you foresee any other compliance requirements, any other needs coming up? And I'm, again, just based on the past, we don't know what could happen, tomorrow. But are we at a good point where this is where we're at, for the most part?
I would think that the one thing that I would point to as a potential wild card is, and it's always the case, is the special education requirements of the district. So into the fall, we get new students, we have existing students, we go through case study evaluations, more needs develop, whatever. Maybe we need some more social work. Maybe we need some more special education resource teachers. Those kinds of things are always out there as potential additions. As far as class sections, we have done a very good job this year and have been supported by the board to have good class sizes. I don't believe class size is an issue at the remainder of our buildings and grades. We're watching one grade level at Blackberry Creek. We have a fourth grade at Blackberry Creek that's not anywhere near adding a section yet, but is getting there. So I don't anticipate getting enough students between now and the start of the year. So to your question earlier about where did these 8 kids come from and have, are they, I don't envision enough homes selling in Blackberry in 4th grade to add that section there. So the short answer to your question is, I think this will do us for now, but know that special education needs are always prevalent.
Okay. Any other questions? Discussion? Okay. With no further discussion, I will entertain a motion that the Board of Education approve 1 FTE for extended day kindergarten teacher at the Kaneland John Stewart Elementary School.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Mankivsky.
Aye.
Mrs. Simmons.
Aye.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Aye.
Mr. Cook.
Aye.
Mr. McCauley.
Aye.
Dr. Lawler.
Aye.
All right, motion carries 6-0. 1 FTE at extended day, for an extended day kindergarten teacher at KST is approved. All right, well, thank you, everyone. It's now time for the superintendent/board report, and Dr. Layden.
Yes, thank you. I have a few updates. The first one, as we are 2 weeks from today from our staff reporting full-time on the 12th, back for school. Just a reminder that we'll have regular updates. Building principals will send out information, but please also take some time to look at your respective buildings and district websites. There's way more information about back to school, curriculum nights, school drop-off, all of that information. So we'll make sure we communicate it, but also check those websites as well for more information. Starting next Monday, we do have new staff induction days. So starting on the 5th, we will start to have our new staff members coming into the district, starting to work as we get ready for the 14th when our students report. One other important date that I would like to share with the board and also share it for information and also an invite. On the 12th, 2 weeks from today, we have our all-staff kickoff back to school day. We start early. We start in the cafeteria at the high school at 7:15 for breakfast, and then between 8 and 9:15 or 8 and 9:30, we do a welcome. We recognize staff members, and I would like to formally invite the board, if you're available that morning, to come. And also, last couple years, tradition of board member sharing. So in addition to just coming to participate and watch, you're welcome to welcome our staff back and share a note of a back-to-school memory that you have or something you'd like to share with our staff. I will send a formal update to you, so that way you know and are reminded about the 12th. And then, of course, on the 14th, that's why we do all of this. This is what all of this is for, is when we welcome our students back to school. So that's always exciting, and more to follow on that. One important thing I want to share as well, about this time last year, we had a topic for future agenda that came up regarding first responder services, first responder emergency ambulance to Kaneland High School. And one of the charges from the board was for myself and Dr. Bogan to look into that, Dr. Fuchs at the time, but then report back to the board. So I do want to let you know that we have had a couple really productive meetings with Elburn and Countryside, as well as the Caneville Fire Protection District fire chiefs over the last couple weeks. And at our next meeting on the 12th, we are inviting them, one of them is here tonight, but we are inviting them back for the 12th for a presentation, a formal presentation, information, share where we are in the process, share the current status and the update, and then allow the board to ask questions at that time related to those first responder services to make sure that, number one, we're in compliance with the request to learn more information, and also looking out for our students and staff at Kaneland High School for their safety and welfare throughout the day. So that will be coming back on the 12th, so a meeting next week with that same group to look at that presentation. So if there's specific items you would like answered, if you have specific questions, please forward those to me, and we'll try to preload that presentation as much as possible to make that as informative for the board and for our community, just an FYI of what's going on. So we're excited about that, to bring that information back. We are also 2 weeks away from our next board meeting. Just as a reminder, with the summer, June and July, we only have one board meeting per month. August 12th, we are back to our next regularly scheduled board meeting, still at 6 o'clock, and they'll be at 6 o'clock moving forward. And we do have Sarah Slattery, who will be joining us as our board student ambassador, and then also Dr. Rolwing, who will be joining us after September 1 as well, formally with the district as our deputy superintendent. So those are a few of the updates that I had as we get ready to turn the calendar from July to August and get ready for school. School shopping is upon us.
Well, thank you.
Thank
Dr.
you.
Bogan?
Nothing.
Nothing? Well, we look forward to that presentation from the fire districts, and thank you guys for all your hard work on all sides, so we appreciate all the efforts put in for sure. Definitely. Okay, topics for future agendas.
I do have one, in regards to an email that we received, I think it was this morning or yesterday evening, in regards to the school bus route. We had a parent inquire, their student comes from North Aurora. In the AM, they take one bus to Harder. It's about a 20-minute ride. But in the afternoon, they get on a bus, have to go to the high school, get off that, go on a new bus with students, and then come back, and it becomes an hour ride. So I'd just like to know, why is that? Can that change, or what? I know there's a bunch of students that are going through that, and it was a concern, so I just wanted to find out why that is.
Dr. Bogan, I don't know if our board has formally been through an explanation of what a transfer route is and how the transfer routes work. Is that something the board would like in an update, or would like shared back here? What do you prefer? Again, with consensus.
I mean, the public would love to know, so, email, come back to us, whatever.
I read the email, and honestly, scheduling's always tough, regardless of where you're at. My biggest concern was middle schoolers being on the same bus as high schoolers, and potentially having to listen to high school conversations and being exposed to certain concepts. And so that's where I'm coming from with the subject.
Same thing.
But without wanting to make our meetings longer, I know we're in an effort to not be here till 11:30. I think it would be helpful to get some insight. I don't know.
I mean, if you could do your weekly update too.
Okay.
I mean, if you want to do that. But I know this parent specifically directly affects her child, that we're able, one of us, gets back in a response. But I just want to know why that specifically. Is it the AM it works out, but the PM it doesn't? Is it because of the staffing? That's where we're like, why does that happen?
If you'd like, with that, I don't believe I received that one. I think that may have just gone to the board. Can you forward that to us, please? Dr. Bogan can have an answer, since Board President Gonzalez speaks on behalf of the board, and get that answered. If you want to reply back on that answer from Dr. Bogan, you can send that to that family.
Sure.
But I'll make sure the entire board gets it as well too, so you can read and have an idea of what that looks like.
Well, and
transfer routes.
To the district's credit, we're a big district. I mean, yeah, and it's I'm sure it's crazy. So I'm sure they're making their best efforts to minimize everything, So, but is there opportunity here, because it is something that's brought up. I'll forward it to both of you tomorrow, and then we can go from there.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? No? Okay. Well, round two of public comments is up. No one? Okay. Okay, fine. You're fine, Sheila. Yeah, no problem.
Sheila Albano from Elburn again. I just wanted, it was an excellent report on the KIPLA. And, but as before, one of the issues that wasn't on there at all is your capital projects and the building itself and what goes around it. So moving forward, since we're all trying to move forward, information on what has been spent capital projects-wise on that building is nearly impossible to find if you are somebody looking for it without a FOIA request. And it isn't apparent that you have a budget for that building that is updated with last year's expenses, especially including the building part of it. So I want that program to work, and was here for the meetings with the parents and how devastating that was for the kids. But in order for us to continue to work towards a referendum, and or even if we never did a referendum, that building has to get put into, there's information on John Stewart, there's information on Shields, there's information on Harder, there's not information on the KIPLA building, on KMAC as a building. So I would encourage you to include that into the discussions and numbers and stuff that you are bringing, because without it, you're not getting the whole picture. And we can't be suddenly saying, oh, we're going to spend money on the building, as happened coming into the opening of that building, without it being discussed in the capital projects like everything else. And if you look at the report from last spring, when we were talking about capital projects, the KEMAC part of it is not clear in any way. So please add that into the whole piece so the community can help back you better, or you're just going to continue to get upset people who don't understand why things are being added to that building without showing up on your financials. And I would say the same thing about your staffing plan. When I look at your staffing plan last spring and all of the things that you could not hire because you didn't have money, you need to be able to say that the benefit to the KIPLA overrides the benefit to an entire middle school when it comes to social workers, psychologists, and those kinds of things. If you put up a list of all of those people you can't hire, but at the same meeting say, oh, but we're adding a social worker to KIPLA, it's not that they don't deserve it, it's that, well, what about all of those other? Make sure you are covering that, and you'll be in a much better shape with the rest of the community. So, thanks.
Thank you for coming. Okay, the Board of Education is scheduled to go into closed session to discuss Illinois Open Meetings Act, Section 2C9 and 2C21, where we anticipate action to be taken following the closed session pertaining to 2C9 student discipline. At this time, I will entertain a motion to go into closed session to discuss Illinois Open Meeting Act 2C9 and 2C21 at 7:19 p.m.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Mankivsky.
Aye.
Mrs. Simmons.
Aye.
Mr. Cook.
Aye.
Mr. McCauley.
Aye.
Dr. Lawler.
Aye.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Aye. Okay, we're now going to proceed with closed session.
Thank you.